I've got all kinds of random junk down here that doesn't really have a proper place to go, but about 20 years ago I made this rack that holds 8 wooden boxes and you can pull them out like drawers. So I figured I should make another rack like this. Making so many drawers takes an awful lot of wood, so I went through my scrap wood and picked out all of this, but that won't be enough, so I'll have to use some new wood too. I've got 20 pieces here that'll make the front and back for 10 drawers, but only 16 sides. So for the rest of them, I glued together the scraps from cutting those to form more sides. Got 10 bottoms cut, 20 fronts and backs, and actually 21 sides because I miscounted, so that allows for screw-ups. I'm cutting 3/8 inch box joints, that's about 10 millimeters per finger, and just to make the cutting a little bit easier, I'm actually removing some of the material on the return stroke. With 8 or 9 notches on each end of the board, and 2 ends to each board, and 4 boards per box, and 10 boxes, that made for 680 notches that needed to be cut. But I cut about 50 of those notches each time I loaded the jig, so it wasn't so bad. Quite often I just nail and glue the bottoms onto the drawers, but this OSB is not very strong and it doesn't slide very well, so I'm going to inset it in a dado, and I've cut some test dados right here and it fits in this one. And usually I just cut my dados by making multiple cuts with a table saw blade, but with 10 of these bottoms there's 40 edges, so I actually have the dado stack set up, and here's all of my front and backs. And I marked which edge is the bottom for these, so that I cut them all on the bottom and don't mess any of them up. I figured it was best to sand all the edges round before I assembled all the boxes. That worked out real elegant. With a total of 10 boxes to glue up, I glued up one corner of each box first. I put those aside to dry while they're square, and that'll establish a square reference for later. And here I'm checking exactly how big the bottom needs to be. The dados I cut in the sides are a rather tight fit for the bottoms, so I'm rounding over all the edges of the bottoms to be able to squeeze them in there more easily. Not everything fits perfectly. The box joint determines the alignment of the boards, but unfortunately the slots don't always line up. When these come together in a corner, there's just no room for the thickness of the bottom right at the corner. So what I have to do is carve out some of that just around here.
As I assembled more boxes, I got faster at putting them together, but it still took about 20 minutes to put each box together. Those box joints take more time to assemble than it does to cut them. Next, I trimmed the box joints flush on the table saw. I then rounded the corners on the belt sander. It's too bad the belt sander is not quite as tall as the boxes are.
Got 10 box joint boxes made, and the idea is that these will sit in cradles like this, because I'm not going to make a whole cabinet for them.
I still had to cut out the side guide parts of my drawer cradles, and I cut those out of some old scrap. And then cutting them to the length of my table saw sled. The cradles also have a notch on either end, so I'm cutting those out here. There's 20 cradles, 2 sides to each cradle, 2 ends to each side, so 40 notches in all. And then gluing those cradles together. I'm gluing together 2 at a time back to back. That way I don't need quite as many clamps. Got all 20 of them glued together. The uprights for this rack need some dados cut out of them, and because they're so big, I just decided to use the router. I'm making another pass with a shim against my fence, and that gives me just the right width of dado. And then I ripped those 2x6s down the middle to give me 4 uprights for the frame.
The boxes are going to slide into a rack made of 2 ladders like this. And to keep those 2 ladders a constant distance from each other, I'm going to join in a few pieces like this. I don't really need handles on these because I can just reach in there like that, except for where I've got these cross pieces. That's where it's a little bit tight. After cutting the handles, I sanded and varnished these things, which makes for an awful lot of work for storage in the basement. But it sure is nice having 10 more places to put odd junk.